Have you ever wondered if your entire life, every memory, every relationship, even your very identity, could be a meticulously crafted lie? Not your lie, but a lie spun by the people you trusted and loved the most. A secret buried deep, spanning decades, and when it finally unravels, it tears everything apart. This isn't fiction. This is a true story. A story of a prominent family, a shocking secret, and a truth that forever changed one woman's life. Amelia Thorne, a name that conjured images of sophistication, power, and a predetermined future. She grew up in Thorne Manor, a sprawling Victorian estate nestled within manicured gardens in the serene countryside of Hampshire, England. The Thorne family wasn't merely wealthy, they were an institution. A lineage spanning centuries of industrialists, philanthropists, and patrons of the arts. Her father, Sir Arthur Thorne, was a formidable media magnate, his influence stretching across Europe. Her mother, Lady Evelyn Thorne, was a renowned socialite and philanthropist, always admired for her grace and tireless charitable endeavors. Amelia was an only child, the sole heir. She was cocooned in what she believed to be love, educated at the most prestigious private schools, and groomed for a life most of us could only dream of. Everything in Amelia's life was eerily perfect. She had it all: beauty, intellect, and a family that seemed utterly flawless. But as we all know, a perfect exterior often conceals the deepest secrets. For Amelia, that veil of perfection began to fray on an unassuming autumn morning when an unmarked envelope, bearing no return address, appeared in the Thorne Manor mailbox. Inside was just a small, handwritten note in stark black ink, chilling and haunting. "You are not who you think you are. Find Eleanor Vance." At first, Amelia simply scoffed. A cruel prank? A disgruntled individual seeking attention? She was accustomed to receiving peculiar letters from those who sought to cause trouble for the Thorne family. She crumpled the note and tossed it into the bin without a second thought. But like a seed sown in fertile soil, doubt began to sprout in her mind. In the days that followed, small details she had previously dismissed now became glaringly obvious. Why did she bear no striking resemblance to either of her parents? Sir Arthur possessed the deep auburn hair and piercing blue eyes characteristic of the Thorne lineage, while Lady Evelyn boasted golden blonde hair and clear sapphire eyes. Amelia, with her raven black hair and dark brown eyes, was always explained away as resembling a great-aunt on her mother's side. A convenient explanation, wasn't it? Then came the childhood photographs. She sat in her private sitting room, hands trembling as she turned the pages of the leather-bound family albums. Every picture was perfectly composed, Amelia beaming in her parents' arms, dressed in expensive attire at lavish locations. But there was something unnatural about them, an overstaged quality. And then she noticed a peculiar detail. In all the photographs from her infancy up to about 5 years old, she was consistently held, tightly embraced, almost obscuring much of her body. There wasn't a single clear, full-body shot of her as a baby, especially no crisp newborn photos. Amelia also recalled the stories her mother told about her birth. Always vague, always recounted briefly, and always concluding with Lady Evelyn being exhausted and needing a long recovery. Her father was always busy with business and could only visit her and her mother for short periods. These were stories told like a rehearsed script, lacking the genuine emotion of any parent recounting the day their child entered the world. A feverish urgency consumed Amelia. She couldn't sleep. She scoured every nook and cranny of Thorne Manor, the attic, the dusty cellar, forgotten rooms. She searched for anything that could either confirm or refute the words in that mysterious letter. And then, in an old trunk at the bottom of Lady Evelyn's wardrobe, she found it, a dusty old box of documents, secured with a rusted padlock. Amelia pried open the lock. Inside, she found another birth certificate. Not hers. It belonged to a baby named Eleanor Vance, born on the same day, in the same year, but in a different hospital. A small, public hospital in a secluded town called Ashworth, hundreds of miles from Thorne Manor. And the most chilling discovery, Another document, a large bank transfer receipt from Sir Arthur Thorne's account to an unidentified account, just days after Eleanor Vance's birth. Amelia's heart pounded in her chest. Everything collapsed. That letter wasn't a prank. It was a terrifying truth. With the name, Eleanor Vance, and the address of the old hospital in hand, Amelia decided she had to find the answers herself. She packed a small bag, and without a word to anyone in her family, she boarded an overnight train to Ashworth. Ashworth was a world away from Hampshire. Narrow streets, old brick houses, and an eerie quietness. The old hospital was now abandoned, rotting wooden planks boarding up its windows, like a relic of a forgotten past. Amelia spent the entire day wandering the town, inquiring with locals. They looked at her with curious eyes, a smartly dressed young woman so out of place in such a humble town. It wasn't until she found a small, quaint cafe, where an elderly woman, the owner, sat knitting. Her name was Agnes, and she had lived in Ashworth her entire life. Amelia cautiously inquired about a woman named Eleanor Vance. Agnes paused her knitting, her eyes distant. "Eleanor Vance," she repeated. "Ah, that poor girl. I remember her. A kind, dedicated young nurse, but her life, it was tragic." Agnes recounted that Eleanor used to work at the old hospital, but after an incident, she had disappeared from town. No one knew where she went, and rumors simply circulated. Amelia felt a flicker of hope. "Do you know where she lived?" she asked, her voice tight with emotion. Agnes hesitated, then pointed Amelia towards a small, overgrown path leading into the woods. She lived in a small, secluded cottage. "She might still be there, if she's still with us." Amelia followed the winding path. With every step deeper into the woods, her heart pounded harder. At the end of the path, she saw a small, dilapidated wooden cottage, hidden among dense trees. Its windows were draped with faded curtains, and no smoke rose from its chimney. Everything about it evoked a profound sense of loneliness. Amelia knocked on the door. The door creaked open, revealing an elderly woman with wispy gray hair tied loosely, deep-set eyes filled with an unspoken sorrow, and a gaunt face etched with the wrinkles of time. It was Eleanor Vance. No introduction was needed, no explanation required. As Amelia's and Eleanor's eyes met, an unspoken truth was conveyed. Amelia saw herself in those eyes, the same deep brown, the same underlying sorrow. Eleanor recoiled, her hands trembling as they clutched her chest. "Are you?" Eleanor whispered, her voice quivering. "I'm Amelia," Amelia said. I think I'm your daughter." Eleanor invited Amelia inside. The small cottage was humble but cozy, filled with old mementos, faded landscape paintings, a draped old piano, and stacks of well-worn books. The scent of herbal tea and aged wood mingled, creating a nostalgic atmosphere. Eleanor recounted her story, word by word, her voice hoarse with emotion and decades of buried pain. Eleanor had been a diligent and ambitious young nurse. She had fallen in love with a local carpenter named David. Their love was simple but profound. Then Eleanor became pregnant. But tragedy struck. David died in a workplace accident just weeks before Amelia was born. Eleanor was left alone, with no money, no family support, and a child on the way. Society at the time was unforgiving to single mothers. Eleanor sank into despair. It was then that Sir Arthur and Lady Evelyn Thorne appeared. They had been desperately searching for an heir after years of being unable to conceive. Through an underground network, they found Eleanor. Their offer was horrifying: hand over her child to them, in exchange for a substantial sum of money enough for Eleanor to start a new life elsewhere, and a vow of absolute silence. Eleanor had fought desperately. A mother's heart longed to keep her child. But the prospect of a fatherless baby, with no future, living in poverty and facing societal ostracism, broke her. Ultimately, in desperation and exhaustion, she agreed. She handed Amelia over to the Thorne family immediately after birth and disappeared from Ashworth, carrying a lifetime of pain and regret. Eleanor wept. Amelia wept. Eleanor's pain merged with Amelia's shock. Her entire life had been a fabrication. The love she had received from her adoptive parents, was it real? Or merely a perfectly orchestrated play to protect this horrifying secret? The pain wasn't just about being deceived. It was the loss of a true identity, a different life she should have had, perhaps a simpler life, but one more genuine. Amelia asked about the anonymous letter. Eleanor shook her head. She didn't know who sent it either. Perhaps a conscience that could no longer bear the burden? Perhaps a distant witness? That mystery lingered, but it no longer mattered. The truth had been laid bare. Dear listeners, this was the moment Amelia faced a harrowing choice. Exposing this truth would ruin the reputation of one of England's most powerful families. It would destroy the life she had come to believe was hers. Or should she accept the lie to hold onto the opulent life she was accustomed to, but live in perpetual deception and sorrow? Anger, pain, and a fierce desire for justice fueled Amelia. She could not live a lie for another minute. Eleanor had suffered enough. So had she. The truth had to come out. Amelia returned to Thorne Manor, but she was no longer the naive girl who had left. She confronted Sir Arthur and Lady Evelyn. Initially, they vehemently denied everything, growing angry and attempting to manipulate her with their false affection. "My dear, you've been misled by someone. You are our child. Don't destroy our family," Sir Arthur roared. Lady Evelyn, tearful, embraced Amelia, pleading with her not to believe such nonsense. But Amelia had proof, and more importantly, she had Eleanor. She knew the truth. She laid all the documents she had found on the table: Eleanor Vance's true birth certificate, the bank transfer receipt, and even a faded photograph of Eleanor with a young man, David, Amelia's biological father. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Sir Arthur and Lady Evelyn crumbled. They confessed, but not with remorse, rather with self-preservation. They claimed they had done everything out of love, out of a desperate desire for a child. They believed they had given Amelia a better life. But it was a selfish love, built upon deceit and the suffering of another. Amelia decided to go public. She sought out a top lawyer, specializing in complex family law cases and inheritance rights. She and Eleanor meticulously gathered more evidence, tracking down former hospital employees who might have known about the secret arrangement. The legal battle began, not just a lawsuit for inheritance rights, but a fight for justice for Eleanor and to expose the abuse of power by the elite. The case of Thorne versus Thorne became an international media sensation. The public was shocked. A model family, a symbol of prestige, concealing such a grotesque secret. Sir Arthur and Lady Evelyn attempted to use their wealth and influence to twist the narrative, but Amelia and Eleanor were meticulously prepared. Eleanor's testimony, though painful, was heartfelt and deeply moving. The evidence presented was irrefutable. The climax was the courtroom trial. The flashes of news cameras illuminated the packed courtroom. Sir Arthur and Lady Evelyn, now looking haggard and fearful, faced the public's judgment. Amelia stood tall, no longer the fragile, bewildered girl. She was a woman who had found her voice. The court's verdict was delivered. The Thorne family was compelled to acknowledge Amelia as Eleanor Vance's biological daughter. Their fortune was severely impacted by reparations and the irreparable damage to their reputation. Sir Arthur and Lady Evelyn Thorne, once symbols of aristocracy, now faced societal scorn and the collapse of the empire they had built. For Amelia, this was not revenge in the negative sense of punishment, but a reclamation of justice, a liberation from the burden of the lie. It was the validation of her identity, the acceptance of who she truly was. She was no longer Amelia Thorne, the heir to a deceitful dynasty. She was Amelia, daughter of Eleanor Vance, a strong woman who had overcome adversity. Amelia's life changed completely. She no longer lived in Thorne Manor. She moved to a smaller, cozier house and began to build a relationship with Eleanor. Initially, there was awkwardness. They were biological mother and daughter, yet strangers. They spent hours talking, sharing stories of Eleanor's lost life and Amelia's childhood memories. Eleanor recounted tales of David, the father Amelia had never known, his dreams, their love. Amelia felt a profound connection she had never experienced with the Thorne family. Amelia also became actively involved in organizations supporting children affected by missing persons cases and illegal adoptions. She used her story to raise awareness, helping others who might be living under similar circumstances. She no longer cared for opulence. The most important things to her now were truth, authenticity, and helping the vulnerable. Eleanor, at last, found peace and happiness after decades of torment. She was able to be with her daughter, to live out her final years in love and care. She had told her story, and she was heard, she was understood. Her pain had been released. Amelia's story isn't merely a personal tragedy resolved by justice. It's a powerful reminder of the paramount importance of truth, the value of a true identity, and the extraordinary resilience of a person who dares to stand against deceit. It teaches us that true love cannot be built upon deception. A family is not merely about blood, but about trust, authenticity, and unconditional love. The Thorne family's desperation for an heir led them to steal a life, break another, and build their entire existence on a lie. Amelia lost a life of luxury, but she found something far more precious: the truth about herself, a genuine connection with her birth mother, and a renewed purpose in life. She learned that happiness doesn't reside in grand mansions or vast inheritances, but in inner peace and genuine connections. This story also serves as a stark warning about the darker underbelly of society, where power and wealth can conceal heinous crimes. But it's also a testament that no matter how deeply the truth is buried, it will always find a way to be uncovered. The truth can sometimes be painful, but it is always the strongest foundation for any relationship, for any life. And sometimes, embracing a new beginning, however challenging, is the path to the most profound satisfaction and authentic happiness. If you've ever felt deceived, betrayed, or simply want to hear a story of justice being served in a truly satisfying way, then Amelia Thorne's story is for you. It reminds us that even in the darkest circumstances, hope and truth always prevail. Thank you, dear listeners, for spending your time with this compelling story. I encourage you to reflect on it. Are there any secrets hidden in your own life? What would you do if that truth were to be revealed? If you love stories of truth, justice, and satisfying revenge, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for satisfying revenge. We'll be back next week with another equally captivating tale about a woman who transformed the pain of betrayal into the strength to overcome adversity. Until then, take care.